If your day has not yet been filled with an abundance of content detailing the graphic, gory deaths of small children, and you would like it to be filled with that, then stick around. This book is for you. And if not, I guess that makes sense. But The Laws of the Skies by Grégoire Courtois is translated from French, and this book, everybody's dying. Everybody's dying, and honestly, I don't even think that's a spoiler, but it doesn't really matter, because if you're watching this, I'm going to spoil everything, so it's fine. So on the back of this book, it literally says, "This fairy tale doesn't have a happy ending. Monsters really do exist. Accidents, illness, the murderous impulses of a classmate. One by one, happily ever after evaporates for the children." It sure does. It sure does. Now, I don't know why I'm one of the people that apparently wants to consume a lot of content about small children dying. I don't want to be that person, but I am, and I cannot deny it because I finished this in half a day. I heard about this book from a couple other booktubers who were listing this in their most disturbing books they've read videos. And honestly, I was like, that just kind of seems bleak. Like, sometimes I like the disturbing in the more like bizarre, gross ways. And I'm like, children dying, I don't even know. But I had it on my list and I picked it up, and this was way more of a page turner than I expected. And I honestly could not put it down. So please stay tuned if you are not opposed to everyone dying, small children dying, adults die too. We don't discriminate here. Hello, welcome. My name is Leah. This is my channel, Dirty Little Literate, where I like to talk about books that are all types of uncomfortable, whether they are disturbing like this one or just bizarre, weird, awkward, what have you. Let's go ahead and get into this one. I'm not sure how long this will take because in addition to reading it in an afternoon, it's not even 150 pages. So if you're like, maybe I want child death, but not for an extended length of time, you could probably do this video or this book. So the premise of this book, it's about a class of 6-year-olds, and I don't know why, but violence against 6-year-olds just sounds so much more like aggressive than like violence against an 11-year-old. It just packs an extra gut punch. And this class of 12 6-year-olds is going on an overnight camping trip with their teacher and 2 of the students' moms. Now, I realize I didn't spoil it for you because on the very first page, it says, the children were on their way. They would never return. So as we are on the bus on the way to this camping trip, most of these children have never been away from their parents overnight, mind you. So I feel like even if everything went perfectly successful, you're gonna have a lot of like nervous, cryy, like, I don't know, kind of scared kids. I mean, camping in the dark, adults get scared by that too. So I don't know, 3 adults to 12 kids. I don't know, we have a 1-to-4 ratio. That's fine, I guess. But you can tell on the bus, on the way there, one of the moms, Natalie, is seeming like she's not doing too hot. She seems like she's kind of ill. And as they're getting closer and closer to their destination, it is becoming more and more apparent. I will say her illness is what is the initial piece in the chain of horrible events that unfold. As soon as they get off the bus, honestly, Natalie cannot even contain her illness. And there is a group of 3 of the students who have already kind of started exploring and wandering off, and they hear something making crazy noises. And so they go to investigate, and what do they find? Let me read you this real quick. You would have to have no sense of sight, sound, or smell not to realize that Natalie Amsel was truly sick. And the stunned children faced with this excremental scene realized it in the most shocking of ways. cheek to cheek with the rosy posterior of a woman who seemed to contain more poop than the septic tank they sometimes spotted when peering down the hole of the old-fashioned squat toilets. Unaware that 3 little sets of eyes were staring at her backside, Natalie was crouched and moaning, contorting herself to expel the ochre pulp from her body, finally collapsing onto her hands and knees to vomit whatever lingered in her stomach. So this woman is violently ill, and there's no way she's going to be able to be any sort of use as a chaperone. If anything, it's like the adults are gonna have to keep an eye on her. So it's decided pretty quickly by the other mom who is on the trip, Sandra. She is going to call her husband and have her husband come and pick Natalie up and take her home because she is so ill. And good idea in theory, but let me tell you, nothing ends well. Anything that I tell you is going to be a cause and effect of something else horrible that's going to happen. Now, we also meet one of the students, Enzo, who is the definition of a little shit. He's a little shit. He's a big shit. He's a piece of shit, this 6-year-old is. Now, we start off by seeing him like purposefully stepping on a snail to upset one of the other students, and then we see him kicking one of the other students, and when the teacher, Frederic, tries to reprimand him for it, he's like, my dad says you gotta hit people, that's the only way they learn anything. And, the teacher tries to, negate that parenting advice, but it is already sunken so deep into this child's psyche that there is no way you're telling him that violence doesn't solve everything. So Enzo, you gotta pay attention to him. He is going to be a primary character, the primary little shit, big shit character. He's an asshole. One thing I would like to note about the way this book is written, so it's very interesting. It shifts perspectives of the characters, like sometimes mid-paragraph, sometimes mid-sentence, where you will go to a completely different setting, to a completely different character, and you're getting the character's perspective, and the shift is sometimes really jarring, but for whatever reason, I feel like it works. Even though at first you're kind of disoriented a little bit, you very quickly acclimate to whose character you're supposed to be getting the perspective of. And at this point, we get the perspective of Sandra's husband. And Sandra's husband is the one who is supposed to pick up Natalie and take her home because she's sick. And we find out that Sandra's husband was so stoked for his wife and child to leave and finally to get some alone time so he could get plastered, and he doesn't want his wife knowing that like the second that she walked out the door he started getting hammered. So when she calls him and asks him to pick Natalie up, he does not tell her he's too drunk to drive, and he's in that like pivotal phase in which in his mind, like, no, he's not drunk, but then he's gonna get in the car and while he's driving being like, oh shit, I'm absurdly drunk. And he cares more about not getting in trouble than he does about potentially hurting anyone, including himself. So Natalie and Sandra had actually left the group to go and wait for Sandra's husband where she told him to pick them up. So this means that the teacher, Frederic, is alone with the children. And this is against the rules, but they didn't really want Natalie to try to find her way on her own because she can like barely stand. So even though it goes against protocol, it feels like they don't have a ton of options. So the two women go off and the teacher stays with the children. And when the two women finally encounter Sandra's husband, Olivier, he is like very clearly driving super erratically to pull up to them. He was super late, and even just in the like one or two sentences he says to them, they're like looking at each other like he's like slurring his words, but at this point, like Natalie had already kind of gotten in the car. And so then he just like drives off before his wife can even say anything. So they both know like, oh, that is a very bad situation. And I think they're, hoping for the best. But I think Natalie's just so sick. She's like, just get me home. While taking her home, Olivia is trying to make some crazy drunken conversation with Natalie, who is in no position to be making small talk, and honestly I think she's asleep and he's just still trying to like talk at her, and obviously the conversation is not going anywhere, and I don't think he even necessarily notices that the conversation isn't going anywhere. But because we are getting his perspective, we see how he is completely sizing her up sexually and getting all excited, and he's thinking like, oh my gosh, this could just be such a perfect opportunity to cheat on my wife, and the universe just handed me this opportunity. It just fell in my lap. It would be kind of crazy if I didn't take it. And supposedly he's never done anything wrong and never cheated on his wife. So like, how could he not have sex with this woman who is literally, vomiting, diarrheaing, not quite in his car, but like, I don't know. She is the like spiritual equivalent of vomit and diarrhea. Like, I don't know how her aura is radiating anything that he's trying to get at. But we also found out that apparently he saw a pornographic video that she was in. So I don't know if that's true, like if he's just thinking that because he's drunk and maybe she kind of looks like someone or what. But anyways, his next course of action, he decides to put his hand up her leg toward her crotch, and yes, she was asleep. So she wakes up screaming because this man is assaulting her, and he is swerving all over the place and drives off the road and into a body of water, and they drown. They drown, they die, they drown. So this is just setting the tone of everything else that is going to happen. And back at the campsite, it's nighttime and the teacher has started a fire and the children are all gathered around it, and he is telling them a story. And during this story, Enzo, the bully, the snail stomper, he's not pleased with the story, so he decides to take it upon himself. He gets a stick, lights it on fire, and then goes to one of the other students and lights his pants on fire. So, of course, Enzo is banished to one of the tents after lighting one of his fellow classmates on fire. The student is okay. It just got on his pajama pants. He's gonna be fine. No, he's not. Nobody's gonna be fine. But alas, so while this is happening, Sandra, the one whose husband just died in a lake with Natalie, unbeknownst to her, is trying to find her way back to the camp, and she is having quite a bit of difficulty. She is hella lost. She's hella lost. And the teacher, Frederic, is getting a little nervous that she hasn't come back yet, especially after one of the students just got set on fire. He's beginning to doubt his ability to navigate this whole situation effectively by himself. And just to give you a little background of the story that the teacher is telling the students, I want to mention it just because it explains the title of the book, The Laws of the Skies. It's about a mouse who really wants to fly, and the mouse talks to a seagull who's like, hell nah, you weren't meant to fly, you don't have wings. And so the mouse goes through all this hubbub of like putting rocks on its sides of its body every day for like a year or something crazy, and it eventually makes its own wings, and then it goes up to the seagull like, hey look, I have wings, I can fly now too, and it's flying, and then the seagull and all the other birds peck out this poor creature's eyes like, don't you know the laws of the skies? Like, only if you're born with wings can you be flying, otherwise we're gonna peck out your eyes and now you get to be a bat. So that's what the story is. So similarly, the laws of the skies as they apply to this story is that you're gonna die, you're gonna get your eyes poked out, horrible things are gonna happen, whatever. Nobody gets their eyes poked out. Wait, actually, I think I'm lying. I think people do get their eyes poked out, not pecked out, but ooh, okay, I didn't even put that together until right now. Hoi, hoi. Okay, so as Frederic continues to tell this story, he notices that the students are looking at him in kind of a strange way. Like they almost look kind of scared, or just like they are just unsure of what's about to happen, and he's confused. He's not able to be confused for long because all of a sudden he is in excruciating pain. Because behind him is Enzo, the bully asshole, with a rock in his hand that he had just hit the teacher over the head with. Now keep in mind he's 6, so he's little, but the teacher is sitting down, so him standing up, he's able to hit him over the head with the rock. But he does not just do this once. No, he starts repeatedly hitting the teacher on the head with a rock, to the point where even when the teacher is down on the ground, he's just and then, like, if that's not terrifying enough, he mashes it so much that the teacher's like brain is exposed, and he starts playing with his teacher's brain in front of all these screaming, sobbing, terrified children. And okay, this is one thing I had a little bit of a, concern with regarding this book is, so my nephew is 6, and I really, like, I'm not talking about like the propensity for violence. I just feel like the execution of such a plan, like, I don't know, like, I just don't even think he would think like, hey, I'm gonna pick up that rock, hey, I'm gonna hit someone in the head, hey, I'm gonna mash around till their brains come out. I don't know, like, but he's not a serial killer. I don't know, like, the behaviors of some of the 6-year-olds, and I'm like wondering if I'm just not that familiar with child development, because I think one of the last videos I did was also about a 6-year-old, and I was like, I just don't feel like that's a 6-year-old, and maybe I'm realizing I need to meet more 6-year-olds. I don't know. Point is, the children are terrified. They are running off screaming. They're all running off in different directions. It's completely chaotic. And we are shifted to the perspective of one of the boys. His name is Lucas, and he's a bit of a lone wolf because he's always getting bullied. Enzo bullies the shit out of him every day. So he knows he's running in the right direction because he's like, bitch, I know northeast, southwest. And he doesn't try to get the other children to follow him because he's like, y'all never defended me. You don't mean shit to me. And so he's running, he's all excited, he knows where he's going, and then he trips and he hits his head, and then what happens, let me tell you. Lucas's bum landed on the rocky ground, and his head banged against something hard, which must have been a rock or the root of a big tree, and the initial impact knocked out the child, whose body was carried along by the momentum of his run and his fall, continuing to tumble and gaining speed over what turned out to be a precipice, which was undoubtedly shallow but deep enough to put the body of an inert child in a deadly position by the time it reached the bottom. And then the book proceeds to describe every fucked up part of his body from this happening. So we have our first child death, and now we are going to pivot to another group of children. This is a group of 3. This trio is Ocean, I think that's how you say her name, Ocean, Lewis, and Nathan. And they're best friends, but Nathan is in love with Ocean, and Ocean is in love with Lewis, so it creates this kind of weird dynamic. But they can hear Enzo calling out to other students throughout the forest, threatening them, he's gonna get them. And so they're feeling like they need to figure out a plan quickly. And they stumble upon the lake, and their idea is that Ocean should swim across the lake so then she can flag down a car and get help. And the reason they're suggesting she does it is because she's the only one of them who knows how to swim. But the lake looks quite large, and the idea of a little 6-year-old girl swimming across it just don't seem like great odds, okay? And Nathan, who's in love with her, keeps trying to be like, it's fine, we can wait till the morning, you don't have to. But Lewis wants her to, and because she loves Lewis, she's gonna do whatever Lewis wants her to do. And so she goes in the water and she starts swimming, and then at a certain point she starts yelling at them that she can't do it anymore, she needs help, and they can't swim either, so what are they gonna do? And at a certain point she stops calling out and they don't hear her swimming anymore, and they call for her for a while, but at a certain point they realize that she has drowned. So I think one thing that's interesting about this story is, all the children are dying in all these different ways, and it just seems statistically crazy to have so many people die back to back to back, but also how often are 6-year-olds, a large group of 6-year-olds in a crazy wilderness situation like this. I'm so curious if this is realistic as to what would happen. I don't know. After Ocean drowns, Nathan is completely blaming Lewis for her death. He's like, you pressured her to go in there, and he's in love with her, and that's his girl, so he's so upset. So he pushes Lewis to the ground and he starts pummeling him. And it doesn't really last very long. They're 6, it's not that intense. But when he pushed Lewis down, the back of his head hit a tree root, a really hard one, and it cracked his head open, and now he's dead. I'm just dang, these deaths are coming at us hot and heavy. And so obviously Nathan feels horrible. He was in a situation of intense emotions. It's not like he meant to kill him. So now he's horrified at what he's done, and he's just panicking, and he just starts running. And as he's running, he runs into a branch that knocks him back. And as he is knocked back, he took some sort of crazy tumble, and he feels this horrible feeling in his spine, and it seems like his legs broke as well. These kids are just fucking rag dolls, I swear, but all of it, it's horrible. So basically he's paralyzed on the ground, he cannot move, and so he's screaming out for his mommy for a while. It's very sad. And of course, the one person you wouldn't want to find you, Enzo, of course he certainly finds Nathan. And what does he do? He has a knife, and yet he doesn't use it. He like kind of scratches his chin, but then he's like, nah. He turns Nathan's head to the like side while he's laying down, and then he like puts all his body weight on like the back of his head to like snap him, and oh, he dies. Meanwhile, we have another group of students. This is a group of 5, and they are wandering through the woods, and they are oh so hungry, and so they decide that they are going to start looking for berries that they can eat. And one of the boys says to them, like, okay, but if it's not something that you've seen at the store, don't eat it because it could be poisonous. And like the students hear him, but also we're starving, shut up. And you're 6, you're like, nothing bad can happen to me. So 3 of the students decide to eat this type of berry that they are not familiar with. And the other boy's like, don't do it. And they're like, yeah. And one of the other little girls decides to follow his lead, and she does not eat the berries. And that is a great sound decision because of course these are poisonous berries, and then the 3 children have to go through this arduous, horrible process of slowly dying from poison ingestion, and they're, retching all over the place, and just, it's a miserable experience, and I feel really bad because the other students just have to watch them and pretty much wait for them to die because they know they're going to die and they know they can't do anything, but they also would feel like dicks if they left, so they just have to watch these other children slowly die. So now, meanwhile, what's going on with Sandra? What's going on with the one adult who is still living? Homegirl is still lost in the woods. She doesn't realize it, but she has been going in a circle forever, just over and over and over again. And how do we know this? We know this because Enzo is stalking her. He's been watching her, and he's just like chilling, like, dang, this lady's going in a circle forever. And what's interesting is he actually really wants to get her attention and basically have her comfort him as if he's the one who needs comforting. But it sounds like his dad is an absolute dick, and like, so he doesn't have any like motherly love in his life. He's never had a mommy make him feel special. And so he's just wondering, he sees this woman, she's calling out for her daughter who is still alive at this point. And he's like, oh, what if she loved me like that? So he's strategizing in the corner, like, what can I say to get her to love me? And so eventually he does call out to her, like, excuse me, ma'am. And he's just saying that he's lost and he doesn't know where he is, and he got separated from everyone and he's scared. And he's like hoping that she will just like have him run into her arms and embrace, but she just keeps asking about her daughter. And it's kind of pissing him off because it's like, fuck that girl, I'm right here. Give me cuddles, mommy. So because they're both lost, it's not like they're really gonna make it back to camp. They need to take a little break. So Sandra and Enzo decide to rest against a tree, and she's like telling him a story because he asked her to tell him a story. Like, he's a good little boy, and so she's making something up on the spot, and apparently he does not like her story. He thinks it's bullshit, he thinks it's stupid, and so he proceeds to take out his knife and stab her in the neck. And the crazy part is, Sandra reacts to this by saying, but you won't hear the end of the story, is what she says with the knife in her throat. Like, oh no, I'm gonna die and you won't hear the end of the story, that I'm sure was gonna be so good. So that was kind of crazy. And then here we go, eyeballs, because he then puts the knife in her eyeball and he's like scooping and digging around in there. So her eyeballs didn't get pecked out, but they done got scooped out, or at least one did. So that's gnarly. Meanwhile, we have the 2 students who did not eat the poisonous berries. The boy who's left, Hugo, he was kind of like the leader of the pack, and the girl who's left, Jade, is Sandra's daughter. Now, Hugo and Jade decide to go to sleep, and when they wake up, it's just Hugo. He doesn't see Jade. He doesn't know where she went, and he's panicking. And then all of a sudden, he sees her crumpled, tortured body against a tree, and it is clear that Enzo got to her as well. He's so busy, but Oof, okay, so how many students do we have left at this point? I just had to pause to do like dead child math because I was like, pretty sure Hugo and Enzo are the only ones left alive. And I did indeed forget 2 girls. They were running away from Enzo and they found the road and they were so excited to run into the road and flag down a car that one of the cars hits them, runs them over. And the driver doesn't even know. He thinks he hit a deer because he sees blood on his car, but he goes and he looks around and he doesn't see their bodies, which I guess got thrown quite a ways. So yeah, those 2 little girls died as well. It was just in a somehow less violent way than a lot of the other child deaths. So I guess that fell off my radar. That's crazy that any of these 6-year-olds dying like could fall off my radar. That's just the extent of the violence going on in this book. But anyways, yes, so we are down to Hugo and Enzo. Hugo, who's like the ringleader, he's like the good guy, he's like the superhero, and Enzo, the piece of shit. And so now we got a showdown. And I think Enzo's thinking he has this in the bag. He's way bigger than Hugo. But Hugo technically gets the upper hand because Enzo's kind of writing him off and counting him out. And so Hugo charges him. He charges him and he knocks him to the ground, and at first he thinks he's dead because everyone just be falling and hitting their head and dying, but no, he just knocked him out. So because Hugo is a good guy, he doesn't actually even want to kill Enzo. He just wants him to be incapacitated so he can't hurt anyone else ever again. So he actually is able to find some straps to tie him up with, because at this point Enzo and Hugo finally encountered each other again when they were back at the campsite. And so there are supplies there. So Hugo finds some straps and he ties Enzo up while Enzo is still knocked out. So Enzo's tied up to a post and Hugo leaves and decides to, try to find the road. And while he's a good distance away, he starts hearing some horrible screams, and the screams are coming from Enzo, and it sounds like he is in excruciating pain. And Hugo's like, oh, nobody deserves that, but even then he's still like, you can't go back, you can't let him loose because he's gonna kill you. So what is happening to Enzo? Oh my god. So I think this part is the roughest part of the whole book, and it is interesting because it's like the worst, most violent thing is what happens to the shittiest piece of shit character in the book. But honestly, let's not forget, this is a 6-year-old child. And despite the fact that I constantly forget he's 6 because he doesn't feel 6 to me, he is a 6-year-old child, and I don't think anyone should ever die this way. And yet, if someone in this book has to. But I don't know, I also didn't like Sandra's husband. But okay, this is horrible. Apparently in the woods there are wild boars, which Enzo knows well because his daddy always be hunting wild boars and brings them home. And Enzo had some snacks in his pockets, and he is tied up to this post, and a wild boar approaches him, and he's smelling all the good smells, and this wild boar is hungry as fuck. And what happens next is described in the most disturbingly detailed detail for pages and pages and pages. This isn't a one-pager, because sometimes with some of the deaths, some of them it just feels like they happen in a paragraph and we're good, but no, the author really wanted to make sure you are immersed in this one, okay? I'm gonna read you just a couple sentences because I want you to understand the vibe of how this is being relayed to us. So the author says, all of this is abstract, we are aware, and maybe you are having a hard time picturing the terror and pain that Enzo felt as the boar started to bite into the flesh of his arm. So we will try to be as precise as possible so that you can more clearly picture the scene that follows, so that you can fully experience what it would mean to be immobilized, tied up, powerless, suffering, and unable to do anything about it, not even understand it. Just suffer and scream intermittently, from pain of course, but also from terror, when you emerge from this semi-consciousness and find yourself assailed by the stink and the power of an animal 4 times your weight. Even you're comatose, eyes closed, cut off from the world. Still you suffer. Did you realize? Can you imagine? You are securely bound. You don't even have the strength to open your eyes. You hear the beast snorting. On top of the pain from the gaping wound on your thigh, there's the pain of your skin, which will soon split open in another spot, a bit lower, near your knee. And it just is like gonna go on and on and on. So like that one is like kind of trying to get at like the psychological piece of it, but you are given so much detail about every piece of body that is being mutilated and consumed by this boar. The boar literally rips his face off of him while he is still alive, and he's like taking his limbs off, and it's just this slow process. I think one of the most horrible points is at one point the boar actually leaves, but then it's still hungry, so it comes back after he's already like gone through the most excruciatingly painful thing, both like physically and psychologically, that you can experience, and then it comes back for more. And at that point it was like, you don't even know if you want to be left alive. Like that's kind of what it says, because like, are you even still a person because of how much of you has just been consumed? And it's saying like, how much of you has to still be there to still be considered a boy? Like if you're missing like your face, your legs, blah, blah, blah. Oh my gosh, this was brutal. But the author really wanted you to experience this one. This one is crazy. So it takes Enzo forever to die, or it just feels like it. Maybe it takes him just as long to die as everyone else, but the amount of detail we got felt like he was dying for 10 years. And yes, it's disturbing and disgusting, but like, if you like disturbing things, you're gonna recognize that this author did a pretty good job with this scene. So I want to assure you that there certainly will not be a happy ending. And I have to just say that because you may be thinking, oh, but Hugo is still alive. Our superhero made it. At least someone lives. No, wrong, because so the alarm is finally raised by the bus driver. When he was scheduled to pick everyone up, they were all supposed to be on the side of the road and they weren't there. He got out of the bus and already you could see some of the horror. I think probably the little girls who got hit by the car, he probably sees that. And so he alerts the police, and they have a ton of police come out into the woods, and they start finding all of these bodies, including Hugo's. And I think it was just, you know, the amount of time that he'd been out there, and he's starving and he's cold and all of the things. So Hugo didn't make it either. And that's how the book ends. Hey, they all died. The police found all their bodies. Bummer. That is how the book ends. Oh my goodness. How did you feel about all this? I don't know why I loved this book so much, and I think you really would have to read it. There's something about the style of writing. I don't know, that he just makes it so like you just needed to keep turning the pages, which is so interesting, because normally with page turners, it's because you need to find out what happens. But like he told you right off the jump, they're all dying. It's not like there were any surprises. It was just like the manners of death. And I don't want to feel like that's like a really important thing to me, that I just really need to be immersed in all the death. But it was something about the way this author writes. I don't know, the author just seemed like he really wanted you to relate and remember what it might be like to be a helpless child, and did a great job of that. I think the boar thing, that is like a fear I never knew I had. I've always been afraid of sharks, and now boars. I just picture the snorting noises and like the spittle while you're being consumed. It just sounds like, my worst fear. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I love when books provide me with something new to be terrified about. Okay, so in summary, not a casual beach read, you know? Now, I'm kind of hoping that you were listening to this video instead of watching it, because I'm filming this at night. So I'm using a certain type of filter and trying to make the lighting better. And I'm realizing that for whatever reason, the filter has been like switching throughout the video. So I feel like it's making me look like different versions of the same human being throughout, which I assume is probably kind of distracting. So don't look at me, just listen to me, I guess. But thank you if you made it all the way through this disturbing one, extra spicy disturbing. Good job, I love it. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.